Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for Spirit, the stimulating program initiative for retirees that inspires thought. I'm Judy Steinig, Director of Community Programs for the Orthodox Union, and it's my honor to coordinate and host this program. The OU created Spirit several years ago as an on-site program, and now we're happy to present it as an online program for baby boomers, active retirees, not yet retirees, empty nesters, sandwich generation parents, and seniors. All of us who are looking for opportunities for educational, intellectual, and spiritual growth. Since everybody still continues to shelter in because of the pandemic, Spirit has become the perfect way for everyone to engage in a virtual setting. Today, we are happy to welcome back Nefesh, which has participated on 2 prior occasions in the Spirit program, in addition to the OU's community fair. We are happy to have back Mark Rosenberg, Vice President for Diaspora Partnerships, and behind the scenes, Josh Sussman, Senior Events Manager. Mark will be moderating a discussion with Rock and Hillel Davis, who made Aliyah in 2011 from Oceanside, Long Island to Yerushalayim in Mir Kasair, and Cookie and Sheldon Schaffel, who made Aliyah in 2018 from Skokie, Illinois to the North Talpiot neighborhood of Yerushalayim. Their full bios were in the emails that you received and on our website. It's my honor now to turn the Spirit over to Mark, Josh, the Davises, and the Schaffels. I'm sure you're going to find this a very enlightening and enjoyable program. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon from rainy Jerusalem. We live in very dynamic times, and there just was a flash rainstorm in Jerusalem for a good 45 minutes. I love the name of the program. I love partnering with the Orthodox Union. I love the name of the program, that it's sharing a spirit. And surely that's what we hope to do over the next 55 minutes, is give you a taste of the energy and stories behind people that make Aliyah. I think it's well known already that usually, in usual times, there's a charter flight in the summer from New York to Israel, where there's about anywhere between 280 to 350 people making Aliyah. And it's a remarkable event to see the thousands that come to see them off, and the several thousand that come to greet them at the airport. And I just want to briefly introduce by saying that I've had the pleasure of being on one of those flights. And for me, what was really significant was walking down the aisle and stopping and talking to people to realize that all of these people had a different story behind them, a different motivation, but we're all faced in one direction. We're all heading to one goal. And people come in different sizes and different colors and backgrounds and all different ages. But really this unifying factor that is Aliyah is definitely a big inspiration and a big lift to our spirits. So what we wanted to do as a follow-up from one of our sessions, which was about some of the nitty-gritty details of the factors that you need to make Aliyah, and the process and the details, which we're very good at doing, and we're helping already several thousand people through that process. We thought we'd really focus in on stories of people. So I would like to just frame this as we're hearing 2 couples, their anecdotes of their stories, but it's going to give us an opportunity to glimpse into what their lives are like here, what motivated them, and what they're dealing with as they replanted here as my neighbors in Jerusalem, but we're all here on Hollywood Squares right now. So I thought I would kick it off. I'm sorry, I just want to say that if you do have a question, we'd love to entertain it probably towards the end. So you should put it into the chat if you do have a question specific that you'd like to ask. I'm going to ask first, I'll go for the out-of-towners first, as a fellow out-of-towner, to Sheldon and Cookie. Could you just share a little bit about your Aliyah story, what brought you to make Aliyah, and maybe if there was a aha moment, a story or motivation that made you say that you really wanted to make the move?
Okay, well, when we retired here, when we retired from our work, we started spending more time in Israel, and every year it got longer and longer, the time that we were spending. We were there for 5 years before we made Aliyah, and at the end we just got tired of packing up each time and having to regroup. So. And we loved Israel. We loved spending time there. We loved being with family and friends. And so we decided it was time. It was a good time to make Aliyah. So we did.
we have two daughters that live in Israel, so it's exciting to be able to spend time with them and their families. I also learned in my learning that Jews have prayed for 2,000 years to be able to live in Israel. And once we saw we had an opportunity to do that, we said it's a must.
Okay, great. I'm just gonna, before we go over to Rock and Hill, I just want to ask maybe a frequently asked question that might come up. Was the weather a factor in your decision to make Aliyah from Chicago?
No.
Said like a true person from Chicago. Amazing.
The answer was no for me.
Yeah.
I mean, as a matter of fact, we come back here in the summer because we think it's really too hot in the summer. So weather was not a factor.
Amazing, amazing. Hillel and Rock, can you share a little bit about what were the ingredients that brought you to make this decision, and if there was an aha moment or not? But what were the factors that led to your ultimate Aliyah?
My guess is that we're no different than anybody else who's listening at this point in time, which is Aliyah has been on our radar since before we were married. We talked about it when we first got married, and then we tucked it away someplace, like lots of other people do. And then we figured we missed the window of opportunity. The kids were of an age which we thought it wasn't feasible or it'd be too challenging. And then in a stroke of genius, I'm not sure why, we were here visiting my sister who was making a bar mitzvah. They've lived here for many, many years. And we went looking for an apartment. And we said, well, someday when we retire, it would be nice to have. And so we did that. So fast forward about 10 or 11 years after that, my mother at the age of 84 made Aliyah. Rock's parents, father was actually older, were talking about Aliyah. And my father-in-law, you said what your father always used to say.
"V'tolichenu mehira komemiyut la'artzenu, v'lo b'teivat shel chevra kadisha." That was his standard line. So
we looked at each other. At the aha moment, we looked at each other and said, A, what are we waiting for? And B, wouldn't it be nice to go when we're healthy enough to enjoy walking the streets of Yerushalayim and take advantage of living here, as opposed to, my mother, thank God, had a wonderful 6 years. She was in a diur mugan. She was in an independent living place. But we wanted to live here, and we wanted to come at an age when we could do that. That presents its own set of challenges, but that was our aha moment. Now is the right time to do it. We'll deal with the challenges as they come.
And we came with my parents. So that was a very meaningful part of being here.
Is there something, Hillel and Rock, there's something that stands out from your arrival, a memory that you carry with you or celebrate your Aliyah anniversary with?
I don't know if we celebrate it. I actually remember being on the Nefesh flight, and some of you know me, some of you don't. I happen to be a very calm person. I don't go highs and lows. But about 3 hours into the flight, I had an anxiety attack. I actually couldn't breathe, and the realization, the anticipation that every single competency I had developed over the course of 5.5 decades of life was now irrelevant for the next X number of years struck me. And I said, I don't even know how to order my cholesterol medication. And I'm going to die within about 3 weeks. So the anticipation of the full change, it's not encouraging, but that was the reality. You want truth, right? So thank God we figured it out, and actually is easier. So the anticipation was such to come upon such a significant change in so many ways that was a little bit striking for me at that particular moment in time. I will agree with you, Mark, that the flight is wonderful. Having the soldiers meet you is wonderful. I encourage everyone, even if you're not on the flight, go meet a flight next time you do it. But there are definitely moments in time that stick in my mind. Yes.
Okay. Well, I asked the Davis one more question before we hop back to say this. I think that it's obvious one of the hardest parts about moving to Israel is being far away from family. What are some of the things that you've done to maintain your relationship with friends and family back in North America?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. The particular challenge for us was I work full time. So it's not like that my time is totally my own. I happen to be blessed in a job where my boss has said to me, your time is your own. So until COVID, we went back Rock probably went back 3 to 4 times a year, and I would go back 2 to 3 times a year. We, at the time, for most of that time, we had 3 children living in 3 different places, which meant investing a lot of time. So traveling back and forth was very important for us. We made it back, Baruch Hashem, we made it back for every simcha, every brit, every pidyon ben, every birth of a baby granddaughter. We made it our business to do that. We spend a lot of time on FaceTime with the grandchildren. We don't care that much about our children.
Even though one grandchild said, Daddy, can we change the channel? So.
And friends is an interesting challenge because we lived in a wonderful community with very, very dear friends. And I'll say 2 things. One, our age group is already aging out of that community. So people, if they haven't moved to Israel, have moved to Florida, have moved to other places. So the community is not the same as it was. But we both make a conscious effort to be in touch, even dropping notes. There's one friend that I text literally every single Erev Shabbat. There are easily 8 to 12 people that I'm in touch with regularly on email, just a note to update. The other thing that we did for a long time, because our children made us feel so guilty about leaving them, that we did the best we could to involve them in what was going on. I would send detailed emails, literally telling about my trip to the post office or going to the bakery, detailed emails describing what our experience was. And those would go out 2 or 3 times a week. I sent them only to my children, and then Rock would forward them to some of our friends who were interested in what was going on as well.
Amazing, amazing. Cookie and Sheldon, what is something that you found successful to help prepare for your Aliyah? That's question number 1. And what is something you know now that you wish you knew as you prepared?
Well, actually, because we spent time in Israel for 5 years before we made Aliyah, we really, had a lay of the land of what we wanted. And we kept renting an apartment, the same apartment for 5 years. Mm-hmm. So we had an idea of the neighborhood and we had an idea of what was around us. So it was really, pretty simple, to make the Aliyah. We weren't moving into a strange place. It was something that was very familiar to us, and we love where we live. So it was wonderful. We're very happy.
Can you describe a little bit what it's like in Arnona for those people who don't know that part of southern Jerusalem? I know it is definitely an increasing destination for empty nesters and retirees as it's expanding. I'll say that my wife's aunt and uncle moved to that part of the neighborhood, and they couldn't come to us for a Shabbat because they've met so many people that their first year that they were so quite busy. They were surprised how quickly they were able to adjust. Well, what do you describe what it's like to live in that part of Jerusalem?
It's wonderful living there. We really enjoy it. We have met people from all over the world. We have made friends with people from different parts of the world. It's just very, very exciting. It's diversified. Not everybody is the same, which really makes it interesting. We're just very, very happy. We happen to be living in the ideal place for us. So we're just very, very happy. We're near transportation. We don't drive. So that's very important for us. We're near shopping, which is again, very important for us. We take classes in different places and we're able to walk there. So that is ideal for us. So it's really just the most ideal location for what our needs are. And our children are not that far from us by car.
Amazing, amazing. I think there are two very hot topics that I think people would love to discuss. I know that they come up frequently, and they are both Hebrew and the healthcare system. So let's talk about Hebrew first, because Hebrew does also influence the healthcare system. Cookie, did you do Ulpan upon arrival, and how have you found living in the Hebrew country? How has been your experience?
Okay, let me comment on that. First of all, after we were here for about a year, I got very sick with pneumonia, very severe, and went to the hospital, and the treatment I got was absolutely fantastic. Okay? The aides, the nurses, the doctors, everybody there just cared about me as an individual. They were all very professional and very caring, and it was just very special. The other advantage is that we have the Maccabi system, and there are offices all over the community. One that's only a block from where we live, and so it's very accessible also, and that makes our life very, very easy in terms of the medical needs that we have.
Okay, fantastic. Rock and Hillel, let's talk about your Hebrew first, and then let's hear a comment, please, on how you have experienced Israel's nationalized healthcare system.
I attended Ulpan right from the beginning and enjoyed it thoroughly. It happened to have been at Beit Ha'am, right down the block. And aside from meeting friends and friends who are friends to this day, and exchanging Shabbat meals, and the opportunities culturally that came through Ulpan, whether it was Tiyulim, classes, Hebrew newspaper, radio. They still talk fast, but it was wonderful. I mean, we heard a joke that the only time you hear Hebrew spoken around here is if a Frenchman meets an American. But the truth is that I find that I'm able to get along. I did come with some Hebrew background, a pretty good one, but not great. And I find no difficulty. The hardest part is when Israelis don't have the patience for me to get it out and they try talking English. So I'm working on that. Oh, the medical system. I guess, we've both had what to do with it. I had a couple of bigger deals here going on, and I have only praise for what we encountered, both in the doctors, the hospitals. There are frustrations if you ever need to wait for a particular specialist, but you can always get something called sharap. Do you know what it stands for? Maybe Mark, you'll explain what sharap is.
I think Sharut Refui, it's private medical services, but it's
right,
provided by the
and
same
you get
doctors
most
in the
of right, and it's very low cost, and you can do up to 3 a year. But bigadol, as we've learned to say, I have no complaints about the healthcare. What was your?
Well, I was going to add two things. One is that we have managed, in most cases, to have English-speaking doctors. So our primary care physicians, both of them speak English fine. A couple of specialists have been Israeli, but it hasn't been an issue.
Australian.
My Hebrew I always say my Hebrew is pretty good for an American. And so I was a big shot coming here, figured, But the truth is that for me, two things stand out. One, I think I have a distinct advantage in that my Hebrew is good enough that I can actually attend Hebrew shiurim on a regular basis. And I don't quite get everything. I'll never get the cultural nuances. I always say, even if I understood every word, I'll only get about 85% of what they're saying.
And we don't ever get the humor.
And but that's been huge for me. And the other thing I'll say is a story which I've told often. For those of us who come with reasonable Hebrew, we figure, okay, at some point we'll pass. But The story I tell is I walked into a bakery in Machne Yehuda, and I was standing on line, and I didn't say a word. I was just standing on line, and when it came to my turn, the guy at the cash register says to me, 41 shekel. So I said, okay, I have to ask you, why would you think I'm an Anglo? I didn't, you didn't hear my rage, you didn't hear my lama. There's no reason for you to think I'm an Anglo. He said, you're waiting patiently in line. You're not yelling. You're not pushing. So you're definitely not Israeli. You're Anglo. So the notion that I could ever pass as anything but an American struggling in Hebrew, that I absolved myself of that notion immediately, and I knew my Hebrew will suffice because I'll always be American, and people will take pity on me, whatever. But that's I think they say, you would know better, Mark, but I think they say 21% of people in Jerusalem speak English fluently or something like that.
I think that's one of those 21% that's like 80% when it feels that way, when everyone
Right.
everyone you bump into has an English accent when they speak as well. I appreciate those stories. It's very interesting living in translation. The Shabbos, you would like to add something?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Our Hebrew is very, very limited, and we find it not to be a problem in so I don't know about the rest of the country, but in Yerushalayim, we seem to get along very well. All our needs are taken care of, and we speak very little Hebrew. So most people we encounter know some level of English, and we're able to communicate.
And Dr. Google is very helpful also. I use Dr. Google.
Yes, I'm here almost 19 years now, and I have to resort to it every now and then when I have to send a WhatsApp in Hebrew. It is very, very helpful. I'll also just add on, it's very interesting, the Hebrew websites the website for the bank, which are in Hebrew, and even now the HMOs have an app. They're quite intuitive, and you're able to find more and more immigrants are crossing that point where they know how to. I think COVID has forced that now that you can't go in to see your doctor without filling out the forms to be able to do that. So I'm glad to hear that. I want to ask a question about Jerusalem because we have this commonality that we're here sharing with over 100 people around the world, but the three of us at least are in Jerusalem. I know that there's a few people here in Gush Etzion here as well. Has there been a surprise? Jerusalem is let me say this. Jerusalem is the #1 attraction for immigrants around the world. It's been marketed very well. Where 2 times a year we say Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, so it definitely has that attraction. But has there been any pleasant surprises or something specifically that has grounded you to the comfort? First I asked Cookie and Sheldon, is there something about Jerusalem that has a resource or something that the city is offering that has been something that stands out?
For me, it's the learning. I probably could go to 5 or 6 shiurim every day. And so I really appreciate the fact that learning has been super. And particularly the Tanakh learning, learning the history. Because in America, we took American history. Here we take Jewish history, and Jewish history is in fact almost all of it is Tanakh. So it's very, very special.
I think that it's not only the learning, which we go to several places for shiurim and we go to classes. But I think that the culture and the things around, there is so much to do in Yerushalayim. It's just how much you want to do, but it's endless as to, you can be busy all the time and do whatever suits you, whatever, works for you. There's a variety of things and everybody can find something that they really enjoy there. Especially the people. I love the diversity.
Amazing, amazing. I asked the same question to Rock and Hill. I want to sharpen it to say is interesting. You chose not to be neighbor with your children. What is it about Jerusalem that has really been that's made it home for you?
So I work in Gush Etzion, right south of Efrat. And when I first started working there, people said to me, "So why don't you move to Efrat? It's a lovely community." And in the nicest way possible, I said, "Are you crazy? First of all, we're at a stage where we don't necessarily need to be in a community with young children, et cetera. They're lovely. I love young children. But more important, and again, this was sort of unexpected for me. And we're in Merkaz Ha'ir, so we're right near Rehavia and Shari Chesed and Nachlaot. So it's a fascinating area. But I echo what the Shaffel said about the learning opportunities for me, and to a lesser extent for Rock, but we often share the experiences. For us, it's been taking classes in Yad Ben Tzvi or the Begin Center and Beit Avichai, Merkaz Chiba. The Steinsaltz Center is around the corner from us. We walk to the old city to take classes with Ir David. So, I mean, there was literally times in our experience in the last 9 years or so that we're here where I was out 3 nights a week at and because I can't do anything during the day because I'm working, literally 3 nights a week at some sort of cultural educational program that I think to a large extent would not have been available to me in the United States at all. And Jerusalem is really the center for this. I'm sure some of it is available in other parts of the country. But Jerusalem is really the heart of it. The other thing that we find very attractive about Jerusalem is the range of characters. You know, the Shaffels talked about diversity. You know, I would expect, blow that out significantly. The diversity is, we were walking down the street after we had made Aliyah, and we had had the apartment for a while, and we had come to visit it. And I turned to Rock and I said, "You remember all those people that we thought were interesting characters walking down the block? They're our neighbors now." So, learn to live with them. We can't leave them anymore to go back to the States. So I just think the opportunities for cultural, educational, the growth has just been unbelievable.
I agree with all those positive things. I will say that I miss suburbia. We lived in Long Island for 30-something years, and now we live in Midtown. So that
not a lot of grass.
Not a lot of grass, right? But so I miss that kind of feel.
Thank you very much. It definitely echoes with me. I think I'm the opposite. I grew up in Cherry Hill, which is the suburbs, and I think I'm living in the city as a balance to that experience. I'm sure my children are going to move out to the suburbs to say they really want grass as well, but we have that as well. We are entertaining questions. So if you have something specific you'd like to raise, please put it in the chat. That'd really be great. I had mentioned before we went live that one of the most persuasive ways to talk about Aliyah is in the honest way, and we don't want to sugarcoat it. There's a lot of sugar out there, but Israel has its ups and downs, as every part of life has. The past 7 months have been quite a surprise for all of us. I was curious if we could get a little bit more practical and say just maybe 1 or 2 tips that you would have for someone who's thinking about making Aliyah, and it could be about something that you learned or something that you observed. And why don't we throw to our Chicago natives first, something 1 or 2 tips that you'd have for any of the people here that might like to join us on this side of the world.
My first reaction is to be patient. I think everyone coming to Israel, especially Yerushalayim, is to be patient because it takes a while to do things. Things aren't always immediately available, and you just need to take the time to let things just sort of flow. The other thing is that again, I mentioned before about the transportation system. I think it's absolutely great, and since we don't have a car, we depend a lot on the buses. One of the advantages to where we're living is that the buses are right there in front of our apartment. But learning the transportation system would be very helpful to people getting along, especially if they don't have a car.
Okay, very good. I was just rebuked by one of our viewers to say that both of our couples are Chicago natives. I stand corrected that there's Chicago roots all around.
Half of this couple.
Half of this couple.
Great. That's great. I want to follow up on Sheldon said. It's remarkable. My first time studying in Israel was at Hebrew University. As I like to say to my children, it was a year that started with a 1. And navigating the buses here was very, very difficult because there was no book that would tell you when the buses come or go. And not only are there signs telling you what the buses, but the applications that are out there for these smartphones definitely has made it a significant easier experience. And as most people who have visited, they might have their Ravkov. I haven't used my Ravkov in quite a long time. I'm not sure where it is. Otherwise, I'd show it. But it's important. It's important to have that. Hillel and Rock, something, 1 or 2 tips that you would want to share to our Hollywood Square audience here.
Our son Ariel said to us after I mentioned this sentence a few times, he said, no longer say, that doesn't make sense. Why do they? And once I was able to let go of that doesn't make sense, that put me in a different place. The buses, I 35 years and I never once got on a bus, and now I take buses full time. To not, that your expectations are that if you get one thing done a day, you're doing great.
I would just add, with all due respect to my colleagues on this panel, Cookie had mentioned before about how, really, once you've been here a couple of times, it's no big deal to make Aliyah. I think that people are lulled into a false sense of security. People say, I've been to Israel 100 times. What could be? I've even rented an apartment. I've been to the Makolet. I got everything figured. I even own an apartment. I know exactly what's going on. And then you hit the wall, right? Walking into a bank like a real person, or going to the, to get gas, and you go, they want my Uzzat Zehut to get gas. What? Where the heck is my? So there, I think reasonable expectations are important. Look, everyone gets off the plane and they're dancing and they're singing and they're kissing the ground. This is like the greatest thing we've been dreaming about for 2,000 years. And then reality hits. I hate getting mail because it's all in Hebrew. Am I going to try and figure out the mail, for goodness sakes? So it's all doable. Set some reasonable expectations, maintain a sense of humor, I assume it was true with the Shaffles as well. Having children precede us was very, very helpful.
Very helpful.
We're actually caught in the middle. Our son was here before us. Our daughter just made Aliyah. So we relied on my son. My daughter was relying on us. But as I said to my daughter, I said, you can't make it here on your own. You have to be willing to ask, to reach out to people, say, can you help me with this? Can you pick up my kid? Can you give me a ride? You have to be able to do that. And it's great because this is a country that wants, there's people that want to be helpful. They want everyone here to be successful.
I wanted to say that to me, when I go out on the street, if I'm going shopping, it's a field trip. I look at it as a field trip.
Right.
Everything is a field trip. You go to the grocery store, it's a field trip. You go to the pharmacy, it's a field trip. It just, it takes time, but it's interesting. It's a field trip. That's the way it is.
I think of that when I think about the post office or a bank. When I went to those places in the States, you went in, you took care of what you had to take care of, and you went wherever else. Here, I rarely come out without a story. This is what happened at the bank. This is what happened at the post office. And it's very colorful to life here.
Very politely said it. Colorful is definitely the understatement as well. Hillel, you want to add something?
If we had another 3 hours, I regale you with the stories. The stories are great. I mean, you have a sense of humor, and as Rock said, be realistic in terms of what expectations. When you go into the post office and you get the story, if you get the mail, if you get the letter mailed, call it a day, call it a victory. So, and if you add on to that there was a wonderful story about someone who was standing in line, or the way the clerk talked to me, that's just gravy. That's great.
I totally agree. I will say that's one of the big things that Nefesh B'Nefesh gives people who do not have family here is a person to lean on to help navigate that system. I myself moved here 19 years ago. Right when Nefesh B'Nefesh started, I didn't make Aliyah with them. And my quick story is that I went to the bank, and Israel doesn't give credit cards out like America. I went to college, and here's a credit card. And in Israel, they weren't going to give me a credit card. So my brother came to the bank with me. He had made Aliyah a couple years earlier, and he said, "I'll co-sign." And they said, "No, we're not going to give him a credit card." I'm 25 at the time. I'm not like a young kid. I'm 25 and they won't give me a credit card. So my brother says, "I'll co-sign." No. And then he whispered something and I said, and they said, "Okay." I'm like, "What just happened?" And I said, "Did you just threaten to bring your Moroccan wife down to the bank to yell at them? And that's what got them to give you a," yeah, that's what he said. He did that. So there is that story that you're able to do and have someone to advocate for you. So we got a lot of questions that came in here, and some of them are really on target. This is, I think, a hard question, but I think it's always good to address that. What is for someone? I'll phrase it to me. For someone who has all of their children staying and grandchildren staying in the U.S., or in a situation where they were splitting their time with children in the U.S., how did you navigate that situation, and what advice would you have? Either of you can respond to that one.
First of all, don't ask the question in past tense. We're still doing it on a daily basis. So go ahead.
I was going to say that we just make sure we communicate on some sort of regular basis. We use the internet, we use the phone. Once in a while, we show pictures on our computer, but all of those things are just tools that we use to make sure we're communicating, because we have 3 in America and 2 here. So being able to communicate with the people in America, the kids in America and their families is very important to us. And we just work very hard at making sure that they know our stories and we know their stories on a very regular basis.
And we try and, come into the States at least once a year. Not that we have, because of Corona now, we missed a wedding of one of our grandchildren, but what are you going to do? I mean, the situation is what it is. Hopefully when this is over, we'll get back on track again. We'll be okay.
That's the hardest question. Leaving the children was incredibly difficult for us and for them. As one of our daughters said after about a year, we're no longer angry, we're just sad. So
having been abandoned.
So, and what I find, and this is not I can't sugarcoat this answer. What I find is a couple things. We do, as I said before, we travel back a lot. We fortunately have that flexibility now. But what I miss is, sort of what I hear from friends, the drive-by. You go on a Sunday to just drop by your kids for a couple hours. That's not available to us, at least kids in the States. I also find that now it's an unreal intensity. We end up staying with the kids, so we live with them for a week at a time, which is it's great and can be unhealthy at the same time. We go back for a week, the kids are in school, so we don't see them for a good portion of the day. So there's something that's, quite frankly, is not quite natural about it. We do the best we can, especially now our grandchildren are relatively young, but we're reaching the stage where, thank God, we had a bar mitzvah of a grandson this past summer, so we arranged for all the kids to come in and spend time together. I will tell you that, and this is unrelated to us making Aliyah, I think among the hardest things is that our grandchildren don't see each other, the cousins don't see each other. For us, it's relatively simple to get on a plane and go see the grandchildren. What I miss terribly is seeing the grandchildren interact with each other. And that's, so far, I mean, we're solving the problem little by little because one of our daughters just made Aliyah, and we're no pressure on our other kids, but that would be nice.
I did one quick story, very fast story, is that when we come here, our grandchildren use our cars from America. So that's good. It's good and it's bad. It's bad, they say, because we're not available. We're not here. We only talk on the phone or using the internet, but they love having the cars readily available to them on a regular basis. I mean, every day.
I think I appreciate how the honest response to it. I'm saying this with the reflection that I know my mother is here as well, and I remember when I told her I was going to make Aliyah a few years before I come, and she said my outside voice is saying follow your dreams. It's amazing, and my inside voice is saying my baby's moving to the other side of the world, and there's nothing that can deny those two feelings, but there are strategies to address it and to push it as well. So someone put in a great question here to follow up. That was definitely the most emotional question. This might be the most sensitive question, but they asked it like an American. So I'm going to try and navigate the way, if they asked it like an Israeli is, so how much money did you take? So I'm going to ask it, how did you navigate the financial tax decision to make Aliyah? I think it's a safe American way to ask it. And how long in advance, and maybe a tip that you learned in the process of decision making. You don't need to disclose your tax reports and following the like other people as well.
Let me start. We get a pension from the city of Chicago and from the state of Illinois based on the fact that we were both teachers. So we have it set up in such a way that that money gets transferred as we requested from the bank in the United States to Israel, and then since we have a bank account here, the money's taken out, to pay for water, to pay for electricity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we were able to set it up so the money can get transferred here from the bank in the U.S. to Israel.
Mm-hmm. So let me just follow up. How advanced of your Aliyah did you start running those calculations, and more important, speak to an accountant?
I would say it started to happen after we made Aliyah, not before. Before, we were only here a couple of months, so it was easy to pay bills because I paid bills on the computer. So when the bills popped up in Israel as well as in America, I was able just to pay them that way.
I think our experience is a little bit different because I've been working since I'm here, and the goal has been to have my Israeli salary. Rock worked for a little while; she's not working now, but my Israeli salary should cover our expenses here. We still have some expenses in the States. We kept the house for a while, so the goal has been to try and separate it, keep the shekel paying for the apartment and the electricity, et cetera, and the dollars that we've accumulated to hopefully not do anything significant, and we'll worry about it later. I will say that, sort of like the Shaffles, we did not do a lot of planning in advance. That's because the aha moment caught us sort of by surprise. And I will also say that I think the expenses are actually a little bit higher than I would have thought. Not because I was fooled in any way. I was not educated enough about what to expect.
Okay, those are great tips. A question came in here. Have you got used to the metric system? Money away from
2.2 pounds.
Market.
Rock walked into the shuk and asked the guy who was selling garinim for 100 kilo of garinim. He thought he had made his week, but no. So the answer is no.
We have Alexa, and she's very helpful, but I don't get it.
Okay, we don't use the system either. We're trying to decide what furniture to bring from America to Israel, and sizes and everything in America is in inches, and in Israel it's all the metric system. And so we keep looking for a ruler that has both, so we can measure it out and see whether things will work or won't work. But it is an issue.
I will admit that I too here I know to order a kilo of rugelach or something. I don't know what it is. I just know that that's what I was told to get. In fact, when one of my children was born and they told me the weight, I'm like, that's awesome. I'm like, how do I convert that to tell my mom? I'm like, so it is humorous. It definitely leads to those humorous moments and your need for patience. Thank you for that question about.
The bigger in the metric system is the conversion rate between the dollar and the shekel. At least you know that a kilo is always 2.2 pounds. But the dollar and the shekel makes a big difference
Every day.
every day. A big difference.
Okay. We're winding down. We got a few very technical questions that came in, and I'm going to share my email at the end. People who want those, whether to bring a car or not, or some specific banking questions. I don't think this is the format for that. I thought that a really nice way to maybe wrap up is with an only in Israel in a moment. I think that anyone who's visited Israel has those stories where things are definitely different than being in Skokie or Oceanside or Boynton Beach, wherever you might be. But it's definitely, I think, to echo one of the things, I think strong pieces of advice here is that it's real life here. It's not just a vacation. And people definitely ask my mom, she says, you have 2 kids living in Israel, you have 8 grand. Of course, you must be thinking about making Aliyah. And she always says she loves to visit, but there's a whole different factor to actually grounding yourself here and doing that. So that's, I think, the big difference. No doubt if there was no COVID pandemic, many people here would have visited in the past 8 months. And we hope that this policy, closing the borders will end soon, and there was a vaccine, and good health should spread around the world. But if there is something that would characterize your Aliyah, a sign that you were here, I'll share mine first, just as a story, and it overlaps a little bit with something I think was that Rock said before. I was in the shuk, and it was right about a couple years ago where they just changed the money. The bills had just changed to new pictures on it, and the Arab man who was giving out the fruits was giving me my vegetables as I was paying, and this Israeli woman was paying as well, and she says, "You're giving me funny money." Okay. And the vendor said, no, it's a new bill. And the woman said, I don't even know who the picture is. And I said to her, it's Rachel the poet. Okay. And I said it in my, I can't say the race. I said it in my, I have an accent. It's who I am. My name in Hebrew could be soup if you call me Marak. It's very, very, very interesting. And the Arab vendor said, so even he knows that it's Rachel the poet, and he's a new immigrant. And I said back to him, I'm here 19 years. What are you talking about? To which the woman said, who didn't know who Rachel the poet was, she goes, why do you still have an accent? I said, I have an accent. What's the big deal? And the vendor said, of course. So what's the big deal? He has an accent. I have an accent as well. And I knew at that moment, I was like, as the moment I was pushing back a little bit, my accent didn't matter, and I got the support from the Arab vendor in the shuk that my accent was legitimate. So it may be you, either couples, or want to share something that was expressing your arrival in Israel, or in that only in Israel moment. Let's start with Cookie and Shelton, please.
Okay. I was going to tell just a quick story. We were going to Motzi Shabbos to a class by Rabbi Wein, and we were supposed to take a right, and we took a left, walking there, okay? And we were walking and walking and walking, getting nowhere. We found a young man who spoke English, asked him if he can give us directions to Rabbi Wein's shul. He took the time to walk us to the front door of the shul to make sure that we got there. And we just thought that was amazingly special.
Yeah, it's stories, like that. People just go out of their way to help you, which is, you don't always find that in America. And the other thing, when Shelley talked about being in the hospital, I felt that the care that he got at the hospital was very, very special here in Israel, that he would not have gotten that same care in America, because they would have said, oh, an elderly person, he's, just take care of him. And I really feel that there was a difference in the way they approached his care there than it would have been in America here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Rock and Hillel.
So I was in a taxi, and he was smoking, the driver was smoking, and I said, "Slicha, yesh shelet kan." There's a sign here. It says "Lo la'ashen," and he says, "Geveret, hachok." The law is you need to post the sign, and that about sums it up. I also, I must make mention of the difference in davening, especially, and I get emotional every time that we say B'tochechi Yerushalayim. And, you know, there's no question that the feeling of being part of something much, much bigger than our existence, front center stage. We're not in the audience applauding. We're front center stage. And I do feel that.
Well said.
Mark, I'll give you some advice if you don't know this. I have, the longer story is, I have a nephew who works with Mark for Nefesh B'Nefesh and is often on the flights. And a couple times he said to me, you know, when my sister made Aliyah, she said, "You want to write something and I'll give it to them on the plane." And so I've done that a couple times, and my sister told me it was very meaningful. And what I did was I told her a story, which I had heard 3 times on Tiyulim that I went on. And it's a story by Yehuda Amichai. Yehuda Amichai is the poet laureate of Jerusalem. Mark, you know the story? So the story that he tells is about a man who is sitting near the entrance to Yerushalayim, and he's got his, you know, shopping carts next to him. And there's a tour guide, and the tour guide has a whole group of people, and he's saying, and he's pointing, and he says, "You see that man sitting over there, the man with the shopping bags? Look a little bit to the right and up, and you'll see there's this arch from the Roman period. See it? Oh, wait a minute, he's moving. I lost my point of reference." And Yehuda Amichai writes, he says, the Geula will come when a tour guide sits there and says, stands there and says, "You see that Roman arch up there? Just to the left, down a little bit to the left, there's a man who was shopping in the streets of Yerushalayim." That's when the Geula will come. And I said to my sister and my brother-in-law at the time, I said, making Aliyah is the moment at which Jerusalem is no longer a tourist experience. It's no longer a story about the, you know, the Roman arches and the digs. It's about the makolet. It's about real people living real lives. It's not visiting, you know, visiting Disneyland and let's go. It's about, and it's just an amazing, amazing experience for everyone. And that story is just so meaningful to me because that's the transformation that occurs when you come.
Wow. That's
Very good.
really captured. That really captured. I post a copy of the poem into the group chat here. It is for if you haven't read it. I posted it in translation. It's also beautiful in Hebrew. I think it's really, really wonderful, and I appreciate you taking a time out of your dinner time slot here as well. I hear the dinner rumbling in my house back there, so you saved me from dinner with my 5 children. I appreciate that, and special thanks to the Rebbitzin and the OU for sharing the spirit. And as we say that to people often here at Nefesh B'Nefesh, Aliyah is not a destination; it's really a direction, and you should always be ba'aliyah. You should always be heading higher. We really appreciate it, and if you want to be in touch, my email address was shared, and you're welcome to contact our website, nbn.org.il, or call us at 1-866-835-0430. Operators are standing by to help you live the dream. Thank you very much.
Mark, thank you so much. And we want to thank the Davises and the Shaffles and Josh behind the scenes for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I think you gave us everybody a lot to think about. Now, there were a few questions that came in that weren't proper for this setting. A lot of them were answered in the previous 2 programs that we had, one in August and one in September. You can find all of those materials in the archives. And following this program, hopefully later on today or early tomorrow, everybody will be receiving a copy of the recording. And in that email, you will have a link to the archives. If for some reason you don't want to receive the recording, please send me an email and we'll take you off the list. So don't worry about that. I just want to tell everybody that the recent Spirit survey that we had been speaking about and asking you to complete closed yesterday. And we're happy to tell you that close to 600 people completed it with wonderful, wonderful information. So we want to thank everybody because your answers will really help us improve the program. Also, I just want to announce that we've created a relationship with a prominent hospital network in the United States, and they will be sharing some of their specialists to present to us. On Thursday, we'll be hearing about breast cancer. This is Breast Cancer Awareness Month from Dr. Lauren Elreda. The link for registration will, of course, be in the email going out today. Again, I've mentioned before that on November 10th and 12th, we'll be having presentations to commemorate Kristallnacht and Veterans Day. And we'd like to open that up to any of our Spirit viewers to join us and make a short presentation. There's a form to participate in your email, or you can just send me an email, but we'd like to close that up by next week, so please let me know. And finally, the other day we had a program on empty nester cooking with Representative Tupperware. If anybody wanted to make an order, the deadline is October 26th, and Spirit does receive a portion of the order. So check your emails from last week. Have a great day. Be safe and healthy. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. And we want to thank our presenters so much. And of course, Nefesh B'Nefesh for all the presentations they've given us. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Laila Tov from Yerushalayim.
Laila Tov from Skokie.
Bye, bye, bye.
Laila
Say,
Tov.
I would like to know where they're from.
Yom.
We can leave them.